The day Earth's Supercarrier appeared, the galaxy's invaders shook. The morning sky over New York turned dark at exactly 9:47 a.m. Sarah Martinez looked up from her coffee and saw ships, massive ships. They hung in the air like dark clouds, blocking out the sun. All around the world, the same thing was happening. Tokyo, London, Moscow, Mumbai, every major city suddenly had alien vessels hovering above them. The ships were unlike anything humans had imagined. They looked organic, like giant creatures made of bone and dark metal. They pulsed with a sickly green light. Within hours, every screen on Earth showed the same message. The aliens called themselves the HFY Hegemony. Their message was simple and terrifying. Surrender or die. You have 24 hours. The voice that delivered the message was cold and harsh. It spoke in perfect English, perfect Mandarin, perfect Arabic, every language at once. The HFY had done this before, many times before. They had conquered 473 worlds. Earth was just another number to them. In the emergency bunker beneath Geneva, world leaders gathered in chaos. Presidents, prime ministers, and generals argued over video screens. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others demanded they fight. General Thomas Wright of the United States slammed his fist on the table. "Fight with what?" shouted the French president. "Our missiles bounced off their shields. Our fighters can't even get close. They're toying with us." It was true. The military had tried everything in the first hour. Jets scrambled from bases worldwide. Missiles launched from silos and submarines. Nothing worked. The HFY shield simply absorbed everything. The aliens didn't even shoot back. They just waited, confident and patient. But General Wright knew something the others didn't. He caught the eye of Admiral Chen Wei across the room. She gave him the smallest nod. They had a secret. A very big secret. "We need more time," Wright said carefully. "Keep them talking. Tell them we need 48 hours to organize the surrender." The Secretary General of the UN looked horrified. "You want to surrender?" "I want time," Wright replied. His eyes were steel. "Trust me. Just get us time." While diplomats sent messages to the HFY fleet, Admiral Chen Wei left the bunker. She boarded a private jet that flew south, very far south. As she traveled, reports came in from around the world. The aliens were losing patience. Their ships had started dropping smaller craft. These landed in empty fields and deserts, testing humanity's response. Military units engaged them, tanks fired, infantry attacked. The results were always the same. Human weapons were useless. The HFY ground troops moved through bullets like they were rain. Their own weapons, some kind of purple energy beams, cut through tanks like butter. Humanity was hopelessly outmatched, or so it seemed. Admiral Chen's jet landed at a research station in Antarctica. On the surface, it looked like a small climate research facility. A dozen buildings surrounded by ice and snow. Nothing special. But Chen didn't stay on the surface. She took an elevator down past the ice, down past the rock, down into a cavern so large it had its own weather system. The cavern was artificial. Humans had carved it out over 40 years, in absolute secrecy. Only a few hundred people in the world knew it existed. And in the center of that massive cavern, sitting in a dock of reinforced steel and concrete, was humanity's answer to the HFY, the UNES Indomitable. The supercarrier was 4 kilometers long. Its hull was made of something that looked like liquid metal, constantly shifting and flowing. Weapons bristled from every surface, rail guns, missile pods, energy cannons that glowed with blue light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Chen walked across the gantry to the ship's bridge. Her crew was already at stations. These men and women had trained their entire adult lives for this moment. Some had been born in this facility. They were the children of the scientists and engineers who built the Indomitable. This was their purpose. "Status report," Chen said as she took the captain's chair. Commander James Okonkwo, her executive officer, turned to face her. All systems green, Admiral. Reactors at standby power. Weapons charged. Strike craft ready for launch. We can be underway in 10 minutes. Crew readiness? Everyone's at their post. They're ready, sir. They've been ready for years. Chen nodded. She pressed her hand against a scanner. A screen lit up, showing her face and asking for final authorization codes. This was it. Once she gave the order, there was no going back. Humanity would reveal its secret. They would either win or die trying. Her communicator buzzed. General Wright's voice came through. Admiral, the Zethkari just rejected our request for more time. They're beginning their assault. Landing craft are heading for every major city. We're out of time. Understood, Chen said. She looked at her crew. Young faces and old ones. Different colors, different nations, but all human. All ready to fight for their home. Give me fleet-wide address. A light turned green. Every screen on the ship now showed her face. This is Admiral Chen Wei. For 40 years, humanity has prepared for this day. We hoped it would never come, but it has. Above us, an enemy fleet threatens our world. They think we're weak. They think we're primitive. They think we'll break like all the others. She paused. Let's show them what humans do when you threaten our home. All hands battle stations. Prepare for launch. Alarms blared throughout the massive ship. 4,000 crew members moved with practiced precision. Chen turned to the helmsman. Take us up. Above the Indomitable, explosive charges detonated. The ice shelf, hundreds of meters thick, cracked and shattered. Steam exploded into the Antarctic air as the ship's engines heated the ice to boiling. The Indomitable rose from its berth for the first time. In orbit, the Zethkari detected a massive energy spike. Their sensors showed something rising from Earth's southern pole. Something big, very big. By the time they understood what it was, the Indomitable had already broken through the ice and was accelerating toward space. The hunt was on. The ice exploded upward in a column of steam that could be seen from space. Satellites captured the moment and broadcast it worldwide. People in bunkers and shelters watched their screens in confusion. What was happening in Antarctica? The Indomitable burst through the shattered glacier like a whale breaching the ocean's surface. Its gravity drives howled to life, pushing the massive ship upward at speeds that should have been impossible for something so large. The acceleration would have killed any crew using conventional technology, but the Indomitable's artificial gravity system kept everyone safe inside. On the bridge, Admiral Chen watched the altitude counter climb. 1,000 meters, 5,000, 10,000. The sky around them changed from white to blue to black in less than 3 minutes. Gravity drives performing beyond expectations, reported Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka from the engineering station. We'll reach orbital altitude in 90 seconds. Weapons status? Chen asked. Commander Okonkwo checked his displays. All railguns charged and ready. Particle cannons online. Missile tubes loaded. Point defense systems active. And the Ragnarok cannon is standing by, though I still think using it should be our last resort. Agreed, Chen said. The Ragnarok cannon scared her. It scared everyone who knew what it could do. Let's save that for when we really need it. The Indomitable broke through Earth's atmosphere and entered the battlefield. The Zethkari fleet was spread across orbital space. 47 capital ships, each one the size of a small city. Hundreds of cruisers, thousands of smaller fighters. They had been moving into position for planetary bombardment. On the bridge of the Zethkari flagship, Warlord Kethzar the Unyielding watched the human ship approach. He was a veteran of 200 planetary conquests. His scarred face showed no emotion as his sensors analyzed the newcomer. One ship, he said to his crew. The humans send one ship against our entire fleet? His tactical officer studied the readings. Warlord, the energy signature is unusual. I've never seen power output like this from such a primitive species. They probably drained their entire planet's power grid to launch it, Kethzar laughed. It's impressive they built anything this large, but impressive doesn't win battles. Target the human ship, destroy it, make it quick. I want to finish the planetary assault before nightfall. The tactical officer began to relay the orders. Then he stopped. His eyes went wide. Warlord, the human ship just fired. Aboard the Indomitable, Chen had given the order the moment they reached optimal range. All forward railguns. Fire. The railguns were humanity's masterpiece, 40 years of research into electromagnetic acceleration. Each gun could fire a tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole at 30% the speed of light. The Indomitable had 20 of these guns mounted along its spine. All 20 fired at once. The projectiles crossed the distance to the Zethkari fleet in 2.3 seconds. The aliens' shields, designed to stop energy weapons and slow-moving missiles, did nothing against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The first projectile hit a Zethkari battlecruiser dead center. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to a 50-megaton nuclear explosion. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment, it was there. The next moment, there was only an expanding cloud of vapor and debris. 2 more capital ships died the same way. A 4th ship took a glancing hit that tore off its entire port side. It spun away, venting atmosphere and crew into space. Silence filled the Zethkari flagship bridge. Kethzar stared at his screens in disbelief. 3 capital ships destroyed. Just like that. In seconds. What? He couldn't find words. What was that weapon? His science officer's voice shook. Kinetic impactors, Warlord. Moving at impossible speeds. Our shields couldn't even slow them down. Kethzar's shock turned to rage. All ships, concentrate fire on that carrier. I want it destroyed now. The Zethkari fleet turned toward the Indomitable. Hundreds of bioplasma cannons fired as one. Green bolts of superheated matter streaked toward the human ship. Each bolt carried enough energy to melt through a kilometer of solid rock. Brace for impact, Okonkwo called out. The plasma bolts struck the Indomitable's shields. The entire ship lit up with blue light as the shields converted the incoming energy. The bridge crew felt the ship shudder, but the shields held. Engineers on Earth had studied alien weapons for decades. They had built the shields specifically to counter them. Shield strength at 78%, Tanaka reported. Those shields really work. Don't get cocky, Chen warned. They're just getting started. Launch all fighters. It's time to show them what human pilots can do. All along the Indomitable's flanks, launch bays opened. Strike craft poured out like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. 2,000 fighters and bombers, each one piloted by a human whose reflexes had been enhanced with neural implants. These pilots had trained in simulators since they were teenagers. They knew every trick, every maneuver. The fighters formed up into squadrons and dove toward the enemy fleet. The Zethkari launched their own fighters to meet them. The two forces collided in a swirling furball of laser fire and explosions. Captain Maria Reaper Santos led Alpha Squadron into the fight. Her neural implant fed her information faster than her conscious mind could process it. Enemy positions appeared in her vision as red icons. Friendly forces showed as blue. She picked a target and fired. Her plasma cannons, reverse-engineered from a crashed alien scout ship, punched through the Zethkari fighter's hull. It exploded in a satisfying fireball. "Scratch one," she called out. "Come on, people, these ugly things aren't so tough." But the Zethkari pilots were experienced too. They adapted quickly to human tactics. The furball became a desperate melee. Ships exploded on both sides. Santos saw 3 of her squadron die in the first minute. She gritted her teeth and kept firing. Back on the Indomitable, Chen watched the battle unfold. The fighters were buying them time, but she needed to do more damage to the capital ships. Target the enemy cruisers. Particle cannons, Continuous fire. The Indomitable's main weapons came to life. 6 massive particle beam cannons mounted in turrets along the ship's hull. They fired beams of accelerated antimatter particles. Where the beams touched Zethkari ships, armor simply vanished, converted to energy and scattered into space. A cruiser died, its hull carved in half. Then another. The Indomitable was taking damage too. The Zethkari were concentrating their fire. Dozens of plasma bolts hammered the shields every second. Warning lights flashed on the bridge. "Shields down to 40%, Tanaka called out. "Hull breaches on decks 47 through 53, another officer reported. "Emergency bulkheads holding." Chen made a decision. They couldn't win a slugging match against this many ships. They needed to change the game. "Commander Okonkwo, deploy the Havoc torpedoes. Target the enemy flagship." Okonkwo's eyes lit up. "Yes, ma'am." 20 torpedo tubes fired. The Havoc torpedoes were small, fast, and carried humanity's most exotic technology. Their warheads used quantum entanglement to bypass conventional shields. The Zethkari point defense systems tried to shoot them down. They destroyed 15. 5 got through. The torpedoes struck Warlord Kethzar's flagship. The quantum warheads detonated inside the shields, tearing holes in the massive ship's hull. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal explosions ripped through multiple decks. Kethzar pulled himself up from where the blast had thrown him. His bridge was in chaos. Fires burned. Officers lay dead at their stations. But the ship was still functional. Barely. "Damage report," he roared. "Multiple hull breaches, Warlord. We've lost main power to sections 7 through 14. Casualties are severe." Kethzar looked at the human carrier on his screens. It was damaged but still fighting, still killing his ships. He had never encountered resistance like this. Never. And for the first time in his long military career, Warlord Kethzar, the Unyielding, felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. "All ships," he said slowly, "forget the planet. Concentrate everything on that carrier. Everything. Kill it now, or we're all dead." The entire Zethkari fleet turned its attention to the Indomitable. Every ship, every weapon, every ounce of firepower focused on the human carrier. The orbital space around Earth lit up like a second sun as thousands of plasma bolts converged on a single target. Admiral Chen gripped her chair's armrests as the ship bucked and shook. The viewscreen showed nothing but green plasma fire washing over their shields. The sound of alarms filled the bridge. Crew members called out damage reports one after another. "Shields at 20%. Hull breach on deck 32. Fusion reactor 3 is offline. Fire in section 9. Commander Okonkwo held on to his station as the ship rocked again. "Admiral, we can't take much more of this. We should fall back, regroup." Chen shook her head. "If we fall back, they'll resume planetary bombardment. 10 million people will die in the first hour. We hold the line here." Another massive hit shook the ship. The lights flickered. For a moment, Chen thought they might actually lose power completely. But the backup systems kicked in. The Indomitable had been built with redundancy upon redundancy. It would take more than this to kill her. "How many enemy capital ships left?" Chen asked. 31, ma'am. We've destroyed 16 so far." 16 capital ships. That was more than most species managed to kill in an entire war against the hegemony, but it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Outside, the fighter battle raged on. Captain Santos and what remained of Alpha Squadron were giving everything they had. Her fighter's hull was scorched and pitted from near misses. She'd lost 6 more pilots from her squadron. Good people. Friends. "This is Reaper to all wings," she called over the command channel. "The carrier needs us. Form up on me. We're going to give those big, ugly capital ships something to think about." Fighters from multiple squadrons rallied to her position. Maybe 200 craft out of the original 2,000. The rest were dead or too damaged to fight. Santos led them in a desperate charge straight at the nearest Zethkari battleship. The alien point defense systems opened fire. Space filled with laser fire and flak. Santos watched 3 more fighters explode. She didn't slow down. None of them did. They had a job to do. The human fighters reached the battleship and scattered, each one targeting specific points on the hull. Their plasma cannons couldn't penetrate the heavy armor, but they didn't need to. They targeted sensor arrays, communication dishes, weapon mounts. Death by 1,000 cuts. The battleship tried to swat them away, but human fighters were small and fast. They darted between shots using the massive ship's own structure as cover. One pilot, call sign Mongoose, actually flew through a gap in the ship's hull and fired from inside before shooting back out the other side. "Yeah, how do you like that?" Mongoose shouted over the comm. But the celebration was short-lived. A Zethkari cruiser swooped in and caught Mongoose with a plasma burst. The fighter vanished in a flash of light. Santos felt rage build inside her. "Keep hitting them! Make every shot count!" On the Indomitable's bridge, Chen watched her pilots sacrifice themselves to buy the carrier time. It was working. The damaged battleship was falling out of formation, its systems crippled. But the cost was too high. "Admiral," Lieutenant Tanaka said quietly, "we're down to our last option." Chen knew what he meant. The Ragnarok cannon. The weapon they'd hoped never to use. It sat along the Indomitable's spine, a massive device that took up 3 entire decks. The scientists who built it had warned that it was dangerous, unstable. It might work perfectly, or it might blow up in their faces. But they were out of time and out of options. "How long to charge it?" Chen asked. 6 minutes if we divert power from everything else. And I mean everything. Shields, weapons, life support, everything. Commander Okonkwo looked at her. "Admiral, if we drop shields now, they'll tear us apart in seconds." "Not if we give them something else to shoot at," Chen said. She opened a channel to the fighter wings. "All fighters, this is Admiral Chen. I need you to make the enemy look at you. Draw their fire. We need 6 minutes." Captain Santos heard the order and understood immediately what it meant. The Admiral was asking them to die, to sacrifice themselves so the carrier could fire its ultimate weapon. Santos looked at her fuel gauge and ammo counter. She had maybe 3 minutes of fighting left in her anyway. "You heard the Admiral," Santos said to the remaining fighters. "Let's make these 6 minutes count. All wings, attack pattern Delta, right down their throats." The human fighters formed up and charged straight at the Zethkari flagship. It was suicide, and they all knew it. But they did it anyway. That was the human way. When backed into a corner, you didn't surrender. You fought harder. The Zethkari fleet focused on the attacking fighters. Hundreds of weapons fired. Space became a maze of laser fire and plasma bolts. Human fighters died by the dozens. But they kept coming, kept firing, kept fighting. Santos's fighter took a hit that tore off her port wing. Her controls went crazy. She had seconds before the craft broke apart completely. She aimed her dying fighter at the flagship's bridge and maxed out her engines. "For Earth!" she screamed. Warlord Kethzar saw the human fighter coming straight at him. His tactical officer fired everything they had at it. The fighter took hit after hit, pieces flying off, fire trailing behind it. But it didn't stop. It didn't even slow down. The fighter smashed into the flagship's bridge at full speed. The explosion tore through multiple decks. Kethzar was thrown across the room. Half his crew died instantly. Emergency systems kicked in, sealing off the breached sections. The flagship was still functional, but barely. Kethzar pulled himself to his feet. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, but he was alive and very, very angry. "Kill that carrier," he gasped. "Kill it now." But when he looked at his screens, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The human carrier had gone dark. All its shields were down. All its weapons were offline. It was just floating there, defenseless. And then he saw the glow. A blue-white light building along the carrier's spine, growing brighter and brighter. "What is that?" Kethzar whispered. His science officer's voice was pure terror. "Warlord! They're generating a singularity, a black hole! They're insane!" On the Indomitable, every fusion reactor poured its power into the Ragnarok cannon. The weapon hummed with barely contained energy. Chen watched the charge indicator climb. 80%, 90%. 30 seconds to full charge, Tanaka reported. The Zethkari fleet realized something was wrong. Ships started to scatter, trying to get away from the carrier, but they were too close, too tightly packed from their concentrated attack. "Charge complete!" Tanaka shouted. "Fire!" Chen said calmly. The Ragnarok cannon fired. A sphere of absolute darkness shot from the Indomitable's bow. It was small, only a meter across, but it contained the mass of a small moon compressed into a point smaller than an atom. The artificial singularity streaked toward the Zethkari flagship. When it hit, physics went insane. The singularity tore through the flagship like it wasn't there. Then the gravitational shear began. Everything within 1,000 kilometers was pulled toward that tiny point of infinite gravity. Zethkari ships stretched and distorted as they were dragged in. Metal screamed, hulls crumpled. Ships the size of cities were crushed like tin cans. Warlord Kethzar had just enough time to understand that he had lost, that his entire fleet had lost, that these primitive humans had beaten him with a weapon that defied everything he knew about warfare. His last word was transmitted on all frequencies. In his own language, it meant impossible. Then the flagship came apart, and Kethzar the Unyielding died. The singularity collapsed after 10 seconds, its carefully calibrated exotic matter destabilizing. But the damage was done. The Zethkari fleet was broken. 20 ships destroyed outright, the rest damaged and scattered. On the Indomitable, the crew sat in stunned silence. Then someone started cheering, then someone else. Within seconds, the entire bridge was celebrating. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. Admiral Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Good work, everyone. Now get those shields back up and start damage control." "We're not done yet." Because scattered or not, there were still Zethkari ships in Earth's orbit, and Chen intended to hunt down every single one. The surviving Zethkari ships scattered in all directions, desperately trying to reach the edge of the solar system where they could jump to faster-than-light speed. The Indomitable, battered and burning but still operational, pursued them like a wolf chasing wounded prey. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display. 17 enemy ships remained. Most were damaged. All were running. She could have let them go. The battle was won. Earth was safe. But Chen understood something important about war. It wasn't enough to win. You had to send a message. "Target the slowest ships," she ordered, "but leave some alive. I want survivors to report what happened here." Commander Okonkwo looked at her with understanding. "Yes, ma'am. Let them tell the galaxy what happens when you attack Earth." The Indomitable's railguns fired again and again. Each shot was carefully aimed. 3 more Zethkari cruisers died, torn apart by relativistic impacts. The remaining ships pushed their engines beyond safe limits, racing for the jump point at the system's edge. Chen watched them go. When they crossed the boundary where they could safely engage their FTL drives, she gave the order to cease fire. 14 Zethkari ships jumped away, carrying news of their impossible defeat. "All stations cease pursuit," Chen announced. "Begin damage assessment and casualty reports." The bridge crew moved efficiently, despite their exhaustion. The adrenaline of battle was wearing off, replaced by the grim reality of the cost. The Indomitable had taken serious damage. Hull breaches on 17 decks, 3 fusion reactors offline. The Ragnarok cannon would need complete rebuilding before it could fire again. And the casualties. Oh, the casualties. Lieutenant Tanaka's voice was heavy as he read the numbers. Fighter Corps suffered 83% losses. 1,660 pilots confirmed dead. Ship's crew casualties are at 412 dead, 927 wounded. Chen closed her eyes briefly. Over 2,000 dead. 2,000 people who had trained their whole lives for this battle. People with families, dreams, futures. All gone in less than 2 hours of combat. But they had saved Earth. 7 billion people lived because of their sacrifice. Record all names, Chen said quietly. Every single one. They'll be remembered as the heroes they are. As the Indomitable limped back toward Earth, the world below was in chaos. But it was a good chaos, a celebrating chaos. The alien ships were gone. Humanity had won. In cities across the planet, people poured into the streets crying and laughing and hugging strangers. Sarah Martinez, who had watched the sky turn dark that morning, stood in Times Square with thousands of others. They watched the massive screens showing footage of the battle. When the Indomitable first appeared, rising from the Antarctic ice, the crowd went silent in awe. When it destroyed the first alien ships, they erupted in cheers. Now, watching the battered carrier descend toward a landing facility that had been built in secret in the Nevada desert, Sarah felt tears running down her face. She wasn't alone. All around her, people were crying. Not from fear anymore, but from relief, from pride, from the overwhelming realization that they had survived. The Indomitable landed with a grace that seemed impossible for something so massive and damaged. Emergency crews rushed to meet it. Medical teams prepared to receive the wounded, and news crews from every nation on Earth broadcast images of humanity's secret weapon to the entire world. Within hours, the truth came out. Governments had no choice but to explain. Press conferences were held simultaneously across the globe. General Wright stood at a podium in Washington and told the world about Project Indomitable. 40 years ago, Wright began, an alien scout ship crashed in the Pacific Ocean. We recovered it, we studied it, and we learned that we were not alone in the universe. We also learned that the universe was dangerous. So we began to prepare. He explained how the world's nations had secretly pooled their resources, how humanity's best scientists and engineers had worked in hidden facilities, how they had reverse-engineered alien technology and combined it with human innovation, how they had built the Indomitable and trained its crew in absolute secrecy. We hoped this day would never come, Wright said, but we were ready when it did. And now the world knows. We are not defenseless, we are not weak, and we will never surrender. The revelations shocked many people, but most understood. The secrecy had been necessary. If the aliens had known about the Indomitable, they would have come prepared or attacked before the ship was complete. But the biggest revelation was still to come. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Chen appeared on global broadcast. She stood in front of a massive hangar door in the Mariana Trench facility. Behind her, work crews moved equipment and supplies. The Indomitable was not our only project, Chen announced. The hangar doors opened behind her, revealing another massive carrier under construction. This is the UNIS Unconquered. She'll be operational in 8 months. The camera panned to show 2 more facilities. One on the dark side of the moon, showing the skeleton of a 3rd carrier, another in an asteroid in the belt, where a 4th ship was being assembled. The Zethkari hegemony will come back, Chen continued. Next time, they'll bring more ships, more weapons. But we'll be ready. Humanity is building a fleet. We're not just going to defend Earth anymore. We're going to take our place among the stars. The announcement transformed global politics overnight. Nations that had been enemies for generations suddenly found common purpose. The threat from space was real and immediate. Humanity had won one battle, but the war was just beginning. Resources poured into the space defense program. The Indomitable's technology was shared with every nation. New facilities were built. More carriers were planned. Humanity began its rapid transformation from a planetary species to a spacefaring civilization. But while Earth prepared for the next attack, something else was happening across the galaxy. The 14 Zethkari ships that had escaped reached their nearest base and transmitted their reports. The recordings of the battle spread through the hegemony's military networks like wildfire. Other species heard about it too. The galaxy had many civilizations, and most of them hated the hegemony. For 800 years, the Zethkari had conquered and enslaved whoever they pleased. Everyone feared them. Everyone submitted. Until now. On the peaceful world of Vela Prime, xenoanthropologist Dr. Solara watched the battle recordings for the 15th time. She was a scholar, not a warrior. Her species, the Velans, had surrendered to the hegemony without firing a shot when the invasion fleet arrived 2 centuries ago. They had deemed resistance futile, but these humans, these strange, primitive humans, they had fought and won. Solara studied every frame of the footage. She analyzed the tactics, the weapons, the human pilots who charged to their deaths to buy the carrier time, the crew who stayed at their posts as their ship burned around them, the admiral who gambled everything on one final weapon. She wrote a report that would circulate through every free civilization in the galaxy. She titled it, "The Human Concern, a New Paradigm in Galactic Warfare." In it, she made several observations. Humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't calculate odds and surrender when those odds were bad. They didn't value individual survival over group survival. They fought with creativity, with adaptability, and with a stubborn refusal to accept defeat that bordered on insanity. The Zethkari hegemony has never encountered a species like humanity, Solara wrote. They measure strength in ships and weapons and technology. But the humans have shown that strength also comes from will, from determination, from the willingness to sacrifice everything for their home. The hegemony conquered 473 worlds. Earth was supposed to be number 474. Instead, it became the first defeat in hegemony history. The report ended with a prediction that sent shockwaves through galactic politics. The humans have tasted victory. They will not be content to simply defend their world. They will grow stronger. They will build more ships. And eventually they will come for the hegemony. When that day comes, I believe we will witness the fall of an empire that thought itself invincible. On Earth, Admiral Chen read a translated copy of Solara's report and smiled. The galaxy was watching now. They had seen what humanity could do. Some would see Earth as a potential ally. Others would see it as a threat. Good, Chen thought. Let them worry. Let them wonder what humanity would do next. Because Earth was just getting started. 2 years passed. 2 years of frantic building, training, and preparation. Earth had changed in ways no one could have imagined before the Zethkari attack. The planet was united for the first time in its history. Old borders and conflicts seemed petty compared to the threat from space. The 4 supercarriers were now operational. The Indomitable had been fully repaired and upgraded. The Unconquered, Defiant, and Resolute joined it in orbit, forming a defensive fleet that made Earth the most heavily defended planet in the known galaxy. But the expected second invasion never came. Instead, something stranger happened. A small Zethkari ship appeared at the edge of the solar system. It was unarmed. Its transponder sent a message in multiple languages, including English. Diplomatic vessel, requesting permission to approach Earth. Admiral Chen, now promoted to Fleet Admiral and commander of all Earth forces, sat in her office aboard the Indomitable when she received the report. Commander Okonkwo, still her trusted second-in-command, stood nearby. Diplomats, Okonkwo said. They want to talk? After what they tried to do? Apparently, Chen replied. She studied the message again. What's our intelligence on hegemony politics? Fragmentary, but interesting. We're picking up increased chatter about rebellions in their territory. Several conquered species are rising up. The hegemony is fighting wars on multiple fronts now. Chen nodded. They can't afford another defeat like the one we gave them, so they're trying a different approach. She made her decision. Tell them they can approach, but not to Earth. We'll meet them at the Callisto Station. Humanity had built Callisto Station in orbit around Jupiter's moon over the past 2 years. It was neutral ground, far from Earth, but still within the solar system. A place where humans could meet with aliens without risking the home world. 3 weeks later, Chen stood in the station's conference room. Through the viewport, she could see Jupiter's massive bulk dominating the sky. With her were representatives from Earth's major nations and the captains of the 4 supercarriers. The Zethkari delegation arrived in a small shuttle. When they entered the conference room, Chen got her first in-person look at the species that had nearly destroyed her world. They were tall, almost 3 meters, with 4 arms and skin that looked like cracked stone. Their eyes glowed faintly red. The lead Zethkari stepped forward. His translator device converted his harsh, clicking language into English. I am Velthar, speaker for the High Council of the Zethkari hegemony. I come bearing terms of peace. Chen remained standing. She didn't offer the traditional human gesture of a handshake. You attacked our world without provocation. You tried to conquer us. Now you want peace? Velthar's expression was hard to read, but his body language suggested, was it exhaustion? Yes. The High Council recognizes that we underestimated your species. We underestimated Earth. That's an interesting way to say we beat you, said Captain Jackson of the Resolute. Velthar's head dipped slightly. It might have been their version of a nod. Your ship. You're indomitable. It killed more of our warriors in 2 hours than we have lost in a century of conquest. It destroyed our most experienced warlord and our finest fleet. You humiliated the hegemony. Good, Chen said flatly. Yes, Velthar replied, surprising her. Good, because that defeat has changed everything. Species we conquered generations ago saw what you did. They learned that the hegemony can be beaten. Now they fight us. Now they resist. We are at war across 50 systems. We cannot afford another conflict with Earth. Chen sat down slowly. This was what she had hoped for. The Indomitable's victory hadn't just saved Earth. It had inspired resistance across the galaxy. So you come offering peace. What are your terms? Velthar gestured, and his aides brought forward data tablets. We offer a treaty. We recognize Earth's sovereignty and your right to this solar system. We offer access to our technology, including faster-than-light travel, advanced materials, and medical science. We offer trade routes and inclusion in the Galactic Assembly, where all major species gather to settle disputes. And in exchange, Chen asked, you agree to halt your military expansion. 4 carriers, no more. You do not build additional supercarriers or weapons of similar power, and, Velthar paused, you do not share your weapons technology with other species. The room went quiet. Chen understood what Velthar wasn't saying. The hegemony was terrified that Earth would arm the other species, that humanity's weapons would spread across the galaxy, turning every conquered world into another Earth. Let me be very clear, Chen said. We built the Indomitable because we knew species like yours existed. We knew the galaxy was dangerous. Everything we learned from you. We studied every species you conquered. We examined every weapon you used. We built our ships from the wreckage of your empires. Velthar said nothing. We're not interested in your empire, Chen continued. We don't want to conquer anyone, but we will never be victims again. Never. If you come back, if you threaten Earth or any of our allies, we will destroy you. Completely. Do you understand? I understand, Velthar said. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. Human diplomats worked with lawyers and military strategists to craft a treaty that would protect Earth while opening up the galaxy. There were arguments, disagreements, and several near breakdowns in talks. Finally, they reached an agreement. The Treaty of Callisto, named after the station where it was signed, established several key points. Earth would limit its supercarrier fleet to 6 ships, not 4. The 2 additional carriers were already under construction, and humanity refused to stop their completion. The hegemony would provide Earth with FTL technology, detailed star charts, and access to galactic trade networks. Humanity gained a seat on the Galactic Assembly with full voting rights. Earth retained the right to defend itself and to provide military aid to any species that requested it. This was the clause that Velthar fought hardest against, but Chen refused to budge. The treaty included strict non-aggression provisions. The hegemony would never again enter Earth's solar system without permission. When the treaty was finally signed, Velthar stood across from Chen. "You have won, Admiral, not just the battle but the greater war. The hegemony's age of expansion is over. You have seen to that." "Good," Chen said. "Maybe now the galaxy can have some peace." Velthar made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. It might have been a laugh. "Peace? No, Admiral. What you have brought is not peace. It is change. The old order is dying. What comes next?" "That remains to be seen." After the Zethkari delegates left, Chen stood alone at the viewport, looking at Jupiter. Okonkwo joined her. "Do you think they'll honor the treaty?" he asked. "For now," Chen replied. "They're too weak to do anything else. But in 20 years, 50, who knows? That's why we keep building, keep training, stay ready." "You don't think we'll ever really have peace, do you?" Chen smiled slightly. "I think we'll have the kind of peace that comes from being too dangerous to attack, from being strong enough that no one wants to test us. That's the only kind of peace the galaxy seems to understand." 6 months after the treaty signing, Earth's first FTL exploration ships left the solar system. They carried diplomats, scientists, traders, and yes, military advisors. Humanity was going to the stars. The Indomitable remained in Earth orbit, a silent guardian. Admiral Chen had retired from active duty, but she visited the carrier often. She walked its corridors and remembered the crew who had died in its first battle. A memorial wall listed every name, over 2,000 names of people who had given everything to save their world. On the first anniversary of the battle, Chen stood before that memorial wall with Sarah Martinez. Sarah had joined the space fleet after the battle, inspired by what she had witnessed. She was training to be a fighter pilot on the newly commissioned carrier Relentless. "Do you think they'd be proud?" Sarah asked, looking at all the names. "The ones who died? Proud of what Earth has become?" Chen thought about Captain Santos and all the other pilots who had charged to their deaths to buy the carrier time. She thought about the crew members who had stayed at their posts as the ship burned. She thought about everyone who had sacrificed so that humanity could survive. "Yes," Chen said quietly. "They'd be proud. We turned their sacrifice into something bigger. We didn't just survive, we thrived. We took our place among the stars, and we did it on our own terms." Across the galaxy, other species watched Earth's expansion with a mixture of hope and caution. The humans were different from any species the galaxy had known. They were aggressive and stubborn, yes. But they were also curious, creative, and surprisingly compassionate. Dr. Solara's prediction had been partially correct. Earth didn't come for the hegemony with weapons and fleets. Instead, humanity offered something more dangerous, an alternative. Species under hegemony control looked at Earth and saw what they could be. They saw that resistance was possible, that freedom was achievable. Rebellions spread across hegemony space. Some succeeded, some failed. But Earth provided quiet support where it could. Medical supplies, communication equipment, advisors who taught tactics and strategy. Never direct military intervention, that would have violated the treaty. But enough help to give the rebels a fighting chance. The hegemony's empire slowly crumbled. It would take decades, maybe centuries, but the process had begun, and it had all started with one ship rising from the Antarctic ice. The Indomitable had done more than win a battle. It had changed the galaxy. On Earth, in cities around the world, statues and monuments were erected to commemorate that first battle. The most famous stood in Times Square, where Sarah Martinez had watched the sky turn dark. It showed a fighter pilot, faceless and anonymous, representing all those who had given their lives. The inscription read simply, "They came to conquer. We refuse to kneel. Remember the Indomitable. Remember the price of freedom." Admiral Chen visited that monument on the battle's second anniversary. She stood in the crowd of thousands who had gathered to pay their respects. Someone recognized her, and word spread quickly. The crowd parted, people stepping back respectfully. An old veteran, missing an arm from the battle, approached her. "Thank you, Admiral, for giving us a chance." Chen shook his remaining hand. "We all gave each other a chance. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us strong." She looked up at the statue, at the anonymous pilot frozen in metal, forever charging toward an impossible fight, and she smiled. Because humanity had learned an important lesson in that battle above Earth. They had learned that they could face the galaxy's worst and not just survive, but win. They had learned that unity made them stronger. They had learned that sacrifice meant something. They had learned that even the mighty could fall. And most importantly, they had learned that no one, not the hegemony, not anyone, would ever make humanity kneel again. The day Earth's Supercarrier appeared, the galaxy's invaders had indeed shook. And the galaxy would never be the same.